Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of GTM and the Tofu Bowl. I'm super excited today to have the one and only Kyle Lacy, CMO of Jellyfish, podcast host and newsletter author at Revenue Diaries, content creator galore. So thank you for joining me, Kyle.
Thanks for having me, Elaine. Much appreciated.
I'm actually curious because for almost 3.5 years, I wrote a weekly newsletter and I also did a podcast in addition to having a full-time job. And it's a lot. I'm curious how you're getting on with that.
Yeah, we actually just talked about this, didn't we? Recently, when Elaine was on my podcast, so that will be released soon. But it's mostly early mornings on the weekend. Like if I'm getting up, I have a certain time frame between 4:30 and 8 a.m. that I can work out, write, do all the stuff that I want to do on the side. So it's just getting up early, frankly. I mean, that's the key.
I actually love the discipline of having a deadline weekly. I think that having something like that just provides that fire that you need. And I actually enjoyed it. I think it was always a scramble. I'm not going to lie about that, but I found that was helpful for me.
I mean, that's the only reason I did it, honestly. Well, it was twofold. It was, hey, I want a deadline so that I write, but it was also keeping myself accountable to keep learning. And, as tooling is changing, the world is changing pretty dramatically, as you know, better than anyone. And so it's a forcing function for me.
I love it. And I love your content. Actually wanted to take a step back. You started as a graphic designer, which also I feel like the hat is kind of bringing that vibe. But how did you go from that into marketing leader?
Well, I'm going to try to tell this story as quickly as possible, but I went to college for music business. So I was very focused on, can I go work at record labels? And what I found was probably not a great idea because it was 2005, 2006. Music industry wasn't doing great. This was when they were getting eaten alive by MySpace Music and all that stuff. So long story short, I started working for a student-run record label at this college I went to, and they needed graphic design work. And so I taught myself graphic design, and it was my first job I got out of college. So I went to school for a marketing degree, but what I really loved doing was designing albums and posters for artists. And so my first job was a graphic designer because it was the only job I could get. Like I barely graduated college and I couldn't get like a normal marketing job. And so this wonderful woman, Elaine, hired me, and she was the one that helped me start my agency as well.
Are you still into music? Is that still a part of your life?
I listen to it, not to the extent of like the business of music, but I listen to it every day for sure.
Graphic design or design in general, I would say is one of my worst skill sets. I don't have an eye for it. I'm not good at it. That's something where I know my weaknesses and I surround people.
But here's the thing. You know your weakness. My problem is now I tried to design things much to the pain and suffering of my entire marketing team. And if they're listening,
that's also fair.
They know. Okay, if I spending any time trying to design something, my creative director, Helen, who I've worked with for years, is like, can you please stop? Just let me do it.
You need a code word like pineapple, like
banana. Well, I like banana. We use banana in meetings. So maybe she just needs to say banana and I'll stop.
I feel like it needs to be jellyfish related, something sea like. Medusa. That's what my daughter's in Spanish immersion.
Tentacle. Yeah, Medusa.
I like tentacle. Medusa.
Yeah. No, mythic. We'll have to brainstorm that after.
That's great. One other thing I was noticing about you is you're like the OG social guru. I feel like you were way ahead of the curve when it came to that kind of stuff. I mean, you literally wrote multiple books around Twitter marketing for dummies back in like 2010.
Long time ago.
How did you get into social, and I guess how has it changed over the last decade or 15 years?
Oh my God. I have a story in particular on how it's changed from today, but it was the same concept of graphic design. I couldn't get a job out of college, so I started doing graphic design. I started an agency and started selling graphic design work and realized that I was getting my ass handed to me by agencies in Indianapolis, where I'm from, because I was walking into the room at 24 and nobody was going to buy design work from me unless it was like on cost, right? And so I transitioned because I started talking about MySpace and LinkedIn and Facebook. And all of these people I was trying to sell website design to was like, what do you mean you understand all this? And so I started selling consulting around Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and that led to the books that I wrote, and it led to my first real job, frankly, at ExactTarget. But I mean, I was trying to do, I don't know if you use Instagram. I'm a lurker on Instagram, but there was a video that I'm going to post on LinkedIn soon that I just wanted to give commentary on, and I could not figure out how to use the reel-to-reel video where you can like your face is over the top of the video so you can give feedback. So
Oh yeah.
I couldn't figure it out. And I went old man and used like a desktop video Loom feature. But that's how much it's changed. It's just the bite-size aspect of social now is, I mean, I feel like my parents, but I mean, we're all getting older. But yeah, it's definitely changed. It's completely different.
Everything is so video oriented too now. I feel like I was actually, funny enough, in the right place at the right time. I just am not social. I'm not a social native person. It's just not what drives me. But I was one of the, outside of that first class at Harvard that was the original Facebook group, I was literally the second cohort of people. I think my user ID was in like the 200s or something like that.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
when I was being a freshman in college, we got invited early to join. And I remember like the original homepage and like the posts and all that stuff. I just couldn't care less. And so many of my friends went to Facebook after college, and so many folks I know, but it wasn't for me. And it's just kind of been cool to see too how, B2B was never a social place. And now I feel like it's changing a lot. LinkedIn is becoming a true social network, whereas even 5 years ago, it really wasn't.
Well, and I do think that social for me has been a necessary tool for, I mean, I don't have debilitating social anxiety, but I have some social anxiety. And so for me to go network at an event takes a lot of time and energy for me, right? It takes a lot of energy. So social like LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and all these tools, friend feed back in the day, if anybody was ever on friend feed, I spent hours every night on friend feed, hours. And it was just a good secondary channel for me to meet people. And I think that's very common for our generation because we grew up in instant messenger, Yahoo chat, like all of these things, the AOL, I don't even know what they called them, but outside of instant messenger, like the chat rooms. But yeah, it's definitely a tool for me still to use to broaden my network and also meet more people.
It's very interesting to hear you say that because I think my personality type is exactly the opposite. I am an extreme extrovert, and you can throw me into a room where I know nobody at all and I will go up to anybody and everybody. But
well, you came up to me. That's how we met. You came up to me and introduced yourself to me. So, I mean, it works. Both sides work. But yeah, I'm the exact opposite.
Yeah, it's funny. Different folks for different strokes for different folks, I guess. One thing I saw you talking about recently that really, really resonated with me is this whole debate on where marketing efforts should be focused when it relates to, are we only tying ourselves to revenue? Is brand gone? How should we be doing experimental stuff? And you had framed it as kind of the 80-20 rule, Pareto principle, which to me felt exactly right. And wanted to just have you touch on that a little bit and kind of how did that come to a head? Are you dealing with that internally at Jellyfish as well?
I'm lucky that I don't deal with it internally at Jellyfish right now. But the whole concept of the 80-20 rule, other than the obvious connection to the Pareto principle, is if you want to make big brand bets as a marketer, you have to figure out how to connect yourself to revenue generating activity, even though we both know that big brand bets generate revenue. Let's just get that out there for everybody that's going to be pissed off at me for even saying this. They all generate revenue. However, you need to walk into a boardroom or executive team meeting aligned directly with your sales counterpart, your peer, or your CS counterpart. And it's about understanding their needs and desires before you come to the table with a brand play. And where this rears its ugly head is when you walk into a meeting as a marketing leader talking about the cool brand stuff you just did and sales miss quota attainment. That's the worst possible output for this. But for me, it's how do you take 70 to 80% of your time and energy and focus it primarily on generating revenue, generating pipeline, and helping sales close business. And then you have the 20 or 30% left of the budget and headcount and time to make brand bets, to do a billboard, to do out of home, to do things that will probably are longer term bets, right? And so it's just been, I started it, my first VP of marketing job at Lessonly, and I've just kept it because it works. Because if I can figure out that 70 to 80%, most of the time, the 20, 30% is icing on the cake. And we can do fun things like board games and different events and things that you wouldn't do if, I mean, I'm going to say one more thing and then I'll stop, but nothing kills creativity more than a conversation about ROI. And there's no other way to do it other than giving your team space to not have to think about an OKR for some creative brand campaign. And so that's how I frame it at every job I've had.
And I think you bring up such a good point too, that the reason people get into this tizzy around it is when there's not alignment among the executive team in terms of both performance and what they say they're responsible for or owning. And just by aligning that and giving yourself that leeway to do the creative stuff and then measure it after the fact, as opposed to starting from.
Exactly. I'm not saying don't measure it, but I'm also, the people that come at me most of the time when I'm saying this or commenting on it, is that they're saying, well, brand's super important. Revenue marketing is killing brand. What's killing brand is that you're not trying to understand what everybody else needs in the room before you spit off something that you think is important. It's communication 101. I've had to learn it the hard way, but it has nothing to do with whether one's important or the other. It's that bookings need to be driven, and then we can talk about all the other cool stuff. Rising tide lifts all ships, of course, but it's a communication thing. That's it.
Humans are messy. What have been some of the big brand bets or swings that you've taken, whether they were successful or not, at Lessonly, at Jellyfish?
Yeah. Well, at Lessonly, we had an idea where, well, every quarter we gave a golden llama to a employee that demonstrated all of our values. And Ben Battaglia, who was on my team at the time, who's now awesome VP at a software company here in Indy called Your Money Line, he had an idea of just sending golden llamas to customers saying, and the only thing was, give this to somebody who's demonstrating your values. That's it. It had nothing to do with the product. It had nothing to do we had a landing page on the website. And we decided to do it. I spray painted the first 2,000 of them personally until we found somebody to manufacture them. And people loved it. People absolutely loved it because it was just so different. And after the fact, it drove pipeline. It drove bookings, it paid for itself, and it drove pipeline. But that's not the reason we did it. The same with Cards Against Engineering, which is a game we produced at Jellyfish. It's not connected to the other game by the same name at all. Just disclaimer. We didn't approach that saying, how can we drive 3 million in pipeline this quarter? We should do a board game. No, we said we've got all this other stuff going on that forecasts that we can hit pipeline. let's do a board game because we think it's fun. And the feedback from the market and our customers and prospects have been massive. Am I looking at a Salesforce report saying, did Cards Against Engineering drive 3 million in pipeline because we have this investment ratio that's very important? For every dollar we spend, we need to generate $20 in pipeline. I'm not, but the ratios across the board are fine because we follow the 80-20 rule. And so for me, it's tangible stuff. We had a Zen garden that we produced for a Zendesk event at Lessonly, and that was the dumbest idea we've ever had because it was heavy. Nobody wanted it. We had to donate. I mean, we had to donate 200 of them and then throw away the rest because it was a heavy Zen garden that we were trying to hand out at our booth. That was a dumb idea. But yeah, it's been more intangible, like Legos, like very experience-driven type stuff.
I like that. I thought when you were going with Zen Garden, I thought you like built a whole big Zen garden on the ground, and I thought you were gonna have to donate like tons of sand or something.
Well, yeah, and I think there's a time and place for massive bets, like what Udi did at Gong with the Super Bowl ads. That's a massive brand bet that worked really well. For me, I try to find the smaller experience-oriented stuff that can scale, that we can send through direct mail or do at events. That's where I get the most of my ideas from.
So to double click on the point you made before around, you did this Cards Against Engineering game and it was working. And you're not doing a dashboard giving you the exact measurement and attribution and stuff like that. But I know you think a lot about when you go into a boardroom or when you're having a executive level conversation, how are you talking about that to the board, to your execs, in terms of this worked well for us? What type of conversation does that look like?
It very much is dependent on what the board wants to hear. Yeah. And I think that a lot of times leaders don't spend the time, and I learned this at Jellyfish. My boss now, Andrew Lau, brilliant job at managing a board. We walk into board meetings with this deck that we think they want to hear about, when in reality, they only want to hear about one or two things on the 15 slides that you created. And so for me, things like the board game are not something that I'm presenting with like, look what we did. We did a Cards Against Engineering game. My Cards Against Engineering for me is surprising and delighting our team and our customers. The board cares about pipeline coverage, quota attainment, thought leadership, total addressable market, competitive, right? They don't care about Cards Against Engineering, even though I loved it, right? That doesn't mean that's not a bad thing. It's just reality. And so I think it's very important that marketing leaders in particular, since we cover so much from product marketing all the way to brand and revenue, that you try to understand what the audience wants. It goes back to what we were talking about before. The audience more than likely wants bookings. They want quota attainment. They want coverage. Brand helps with that, but that's not what you lead with. And I'm sorry that people are mad about that, but that's reality. We're building a business, right?
You nailed it. And I think I have an unfair advantage having been on the VC side for 5 years on the investing side. I know you were in-house at a VC for a bit too. I was
in-house, but not the same as what you were doing. But that's, yeah, I mean, 100%.
I still sit on boards, and it's just fascinating because, to your point, people spend so long putting together this big presentation when all you need to do is have a discussion and also think through incentive alignment, meaning what does that person need to do their job well? Right. If you're an investor, it's being able to mark up the company. Is it actually, how is it performing relative to expectations? Where are they going to be to raise their next round? Those type of things. How repeatable is their sales motion? Those are the things VCs care about, not.
Well, yeah, and are you going to hit bookings this year? Yeah. Are you going to hit it next quarter? Not, let me show you 5 slides of what we just did. Like that's fine. And it's good for a readout, and every board's different. And just because they're not asking about it doesn't mean that they don't care. Great boards, and I'm a part of one at Jellyfish. They understand the brand's important, but that doesn't mean I'm doing a massive presentation about it, right? It means that we're investing in it, but it's incentive alignment is the best way you could have possibly described it, and I'm going to steal that from you. But that is what we're trying to do. That's half of our job is incentive alignment as an executive.
I think all marketers need to study psychology to some extent, because everything in the world is about incentive alignment and understanding human psychology. And once you understand that and you frame everything around one of those or both of those two dynamics, life becomes easy.
Yep. I mean, that's a mic drop statement right there. Seriously.
Well, thank you. When it comes, actually, speaking of that, when it comes to aligning with your sales counterpart, do you have any tips or tricks, or how do you like to go and build that rapport and that alignment with your kind of CRO or sales counterpart?
Spend the time to understand what they care about. Don't assume it. And that's going to take more than just let's meet for 30 minutes and learn about what you need. Second thing is try extremely hard to be involved in the conversations between finance and sales when it comes to target setting and modeling. So headcount capacity, especially I've been in sales led my entire career, sales led organizations, not product led. So headcount capacity modeling, top down, bottoms up, like all that stuff's very, very important. I just don't come across many marketing leaders that think that way. Like they're not sitting there thinking, I really need to understand the headcount capacity model for the sales team. And the reason why you need to understand it is because if you understand what drives revenue and pipeline, you can go to your sales leader and say, hey, you were thinking about hiring this and this. I think that I could use some of that money to drive this. And marketers if you can have that conversation with your sales leader and it's a productive one, you have figured out alignment. Check the box. But for me, it's you've got to spend the time to understand where they're coming from and what they need and what keeps them up at night. Incentive alignment.
That's really smart. And I don't think a lot of people are having that conversation early enough.
They're not.
Have you seen any so I will definitely tell you, talking to so many marketing leaders, the last year and a half and going into the rest of 2025, on the marketing side, the entire name of the game is do more with less. In terms of capacity, headcount planning, people are trying to lean down their teams, not planning on doing a lot of hiring. Have you seen any shift on the sales side? Are you seeing that from a headcount planning perspective, it's pretty much the same as before?
I mean, same as before. I mean, we're lucky that we're growing and we're successful, honestly. Like I'm seeing more of the impact on the marketing side, we talk a lot about on the software engineering side at Jellyfish because we're tracking all these code gen tools, right? But not on the sales side. No.
Any big bets you and your team are placing for this year, whether it's a new channel direction or strategy or things like that you're willing to share?
Other than tofu?
Yeah, that too.
I would call you all a big bet.
That's good.
Tofu for sure. No, I mean, we're trying extremely hard to differentiate our channel strategy from solely paid ads to out of home to testing other experiences. Out of home can be extremely targeted in a meaningful way, and we're just now looking at that. We're making big bets on search still. I mean, everybody that's freaking out about AI taking over, we're still investing heavily into it, and it's working very well for us.
Paid or organic or both?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Like we started investing heavily into it mid last year, and it has been great for us. And so we're going to continue doing it, even though people are saying everything's changing and blah, 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 which it is, but there's ways around it and there's ways to adapt. And then, you know, we're still doubling down on events. Events still work really well for us, in-person events.
I think that I'm hearing that very consistently, by the way, is in person. I think there's been a swing back, especially given some of the digital channels are just so saturated and it just feels overwhelming, that being able to go and meet with peers or meet with, you know, aspirational folks or stuff like that, having a reason to get out of the house still feels like something that's a drive right now.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter what industry you're in or who you're selling to. People do want to get out of the house. They do want to meet, some more than others, but you know, it does work for us.
One of the things too that should have been obvious, and I can't believe I didn't think of this before, but we like to do these small dinners with CMOs, curated. It's a single threaded conversation. It's, you know, very intimate. And everyone always wants to go and bring in the buyers, the executives, and do in person with them. But in reality, nobody's targeting the users, the people who are lower down on the food chain, earlier in their careers. And so you have a huge unfair advantage as opposed to pinging the same people every other company is trying to get to a dinner by going after the users, the ICs. So we're going to start doing that in these small meetup dinners as well, which I think will be fun this year.
That's great. Perfect. I know I can name a few people who would love to come to that dinner on my side.
I will hit you up for sure.
You should.
One last question I have for you. Actually, I have two quick ones. One is there a brand or company out there that you just think is absolutely crushing it? Like just from a marketing perspective, you're like, this is excellent. This is like doing a really, really strong job.
Ramp.
Yeah.
I can't get away from it. I mean, I've tried to find somebody else doing it better, and there's nobody doing it better than Ramp right now.
Good one to go study.
Yeah.
The last kind of rapid fire question for you is, if you could wave a magic wand, and this could be related to your current work situation, to solve the biggest challenge, unblock a blocker, like transform something that's like frustrating you, what would that be?
I think it has to do with the structure and the processes that have to be put in place to fully embrace AI tooling, which that just sounded like a bunch of buzzwords. How let me try again. I mean, the structure and process of using AI in marketing, like that, I think that I don't think any of us truly know how impactful it's going to be, other than it is going to completely change the way we work as marketers. I think marketing and software engineers are the two teams that are going to have the most impact over the next couple of years. And if I could wave a magic wand, it would be understanding that impact over the next couple of years and how teams are going to change and org structure, and you know what junior marketers have to figure out, because as senior ICs get more knowledge and information about AI, teams are going to get smaller, and it's just, there's so much to unpack there that I'm just glad that I'm alive during this time period, because it's going to be crazy. It already is, but it's just going to get more nuts.
It is crazy, and everything is changing so quickly. And to piggyback on your comment, I do think that one of the biggest things that I'm seeing happen now slowly, there's a little friction around it, is using AI isn't just a impact to the team, it's a mindset shift for every individual.
Right.
And I even find myself sometimes doing something the old way or a manual way, where AI can do it way better, way faster, way more efficiently. And I have to remind myself of, this is not the process anymore. Right. This is the process. Right. And I find that every single person has that curve, and it's part muscle building and repetition. But I think that's also something where we have to figure out ways as leaders to help our teams get into that mindset. And I'm seeing the companies who are doing it the fastest, it's almost the both carrot and stick mandate. It's kind of like you will be using this or you will be gone type thing. But
I'll also, allocate budget to help your team, to educate your team on using these tools too. I mean,
Yes, absolutely.
it's not, yeah, I would argue that your team should be out there learning on themselves because they're professionals and that's what we do. But you should also help. You should hire people to help them learn about, there's just so much out there that, and go buy tofu for your team because tofu's great.
Thank you for the plug. Always
Yeah,
appreciate
I mean,
it.
because it is. I mean, I'm not lying at all. It's a great tool.
Well, thank you, Kyle. This has been super fun. Definitely excited to do round 2 at some point, but appreciate it. And everyone should follow Kyle and all of his stuff if they are not already. It's great content.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle.